going to get the program started, and first on the agenda is Dr. Jay Bansal as the convener of the program. Dr. Jay is going to declare the conference open. So, Dr. Jay.
Distinguished panelists and speakers, artists and respected delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Namaste, Sat Shri Akal, and a very good evening to you. I'm deeply honored to welcome you to the first ever THREADS conference, a conference with one simple aim: to tell the story of the Hindu American. So what is THREADS about? 500 years. Almost 500 years after Columbus thought he had reached the shores of India, Indians discovered America. They came from different corners of the world, initially as a trickle, then as a steady stream, which then turned to a deluge in the early 90s as America was going through a transition from the old economy to the information-based modern economy. Over the span of 50 years or so, the Hindu Americans have integrated themselves into the fabric of America, enriching it with their own special colors, and yet retaining their very special, their own identity, their own special identity as Hindus. As physicians, scientists, business leaders, entrepreneurs, educators, artists, and experts in many, many other fields, the Hindu Americans are making strong contribution to the life in America. However, as they got on to the business of establishing themselves and making these wonderful contributions, they never found the time as a community to look back and see the road that they had taken until this moment. Thanks to a number of visionaries in the Hindu American community, the seed of THREADS started germinating some 7 years ago. However, we did not find a critical mass at that time. So the concept was percolating for a number of years until last year about this time. We started to give it a concrete shape, and THREADS 2019 was born. Over this intervening 12 months or so, there have been literally, I can't say hundreds of conference calls and probably scores and scores of volunteers and organizers all over the country come together and work day and night to put this event together. One such visionary is a very dear friend of mine, and in fact I consider him a mentor, and that is, of course, Dr. Abhay Khan. He's the president of the World Hindu Council of America. If there is one person who can be credited with bringing this conference together, then I would say it's him. And it really saddens me to say that he is unable to be here tonight because he had a serious health situation a few weeks ago. He's doing well, and unfortunately he simply cannot be here with us tonight. But knowing him, he's fully engaged. As this live stream is going out, I'm sure he's sitting in the comfort of his living room and watching us. So I would just ask you to please give him the applause. So, what are we trying to accomplish with this conference? The answer lies in 3 simple words embedded in the tagline of this conference: share, appreciate, and engage. To share the story of the Hindu American, to talk about their journey, their trials, their tribulations, but most importantly, their contributions to the land that they have adopted, the United States of America. In addition to that, to appreciate the fact that this land opened its doors and its hearts and gave us the opportunity to be here, to be something, and to be able to make these contributions that we're going to talk about. And most importantly, we want to engage in a conversation with the society at large on how together we can make the country even stronger and march towards a better future for all. How are we going to do it? We are fortunate to have been able to bring together what I would consider a galaxy of eminent panelists and speakers under one roof on one platform. If you look at the CV of these speakers and panelists, it is simply amazing. Each one of them comes with tremendous amount of accomplishments. Over the next day and a half, they will participate in panel discussions on topics ranging from arts and literature, business and enterprise, technology and entrepreneurship, medicine, and so on and so forth. You've seen the agenda. In these panels, they will attempt to tease out a picture of what the Hindu Americans have been doing for the last 50 years or so, and where they're going forward, how they're going to what their role is going to be going forward in making this country stronger and even better. I have no doubt that these will be stimulating, inspiring, and enlightening conversations, and I, for one, am looking forward to them. I would like to acknowledge that we have a very packed agenda, and is it ever packed? For instance, we have 3 panels before lunch tomorrow, 3 after lunch, and then 2 more after dinner. So it really is going to be a busy day. And then of course 2 on Sunday, followed by the closing session, as you know. And incidentally, we've been able to find time to have 3 wonderful musical performances, one tonight following the inauguration, and then one every morning over the next 2 days. So, all in all, well, I should also point out, how could I forget, we have some 40 posters on different subjects displayed in the galleries outside, and a wonderful exhibition of Madhubani art is also there for your enjoyment. All in all, there is plenty of food for the brain, for the heart, for the soul, and of course for the stomachs. So let me close by saying that the entire THREDS team is delighted that you're all here. On behalf of the entire team, I invite you to partake in everything this conference has to offer. Share, appreciate, and engage towards a better future together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jai Bansal. For those of you that may not know him, just a brief note on Dr. Jai Bansal. He is a long-term member of the World Hindu Council of America and is currently serving as a member of its governing council. But by profession, he's a scientist, and he retired in 2014. As a Chief Scientific Officer and Global Technology Advisor for ExxonMobil. So that's Dr. Jai Bansal. Thank you very much. We have among us this evening to distinguish and worthy members from our House of Representatives. One is Mr. Taki Chan, a state representative from the 2nd Norfolk District. Welcome. And we have a former state representative, Mr. Robert Lancia from Rhode Island. Welcome. On to the next part of it, the evening, I'm going to be reading the letter that was sent to the organizers of the event from City of Woburn, Massachusetts, Mayor Scott Galvin. So, this letter is addressed to the World Hindu Council, dated October 29, 2019. Dr. Abhay Asthana, President of the World Hindu Council of America, organizes and attendees of the Threads 2019 conference. It's my pleasure to offer a warm welcome to this community-driven conference aimed at sharing the story of Hindu Americans who are deeply woven into the fabric of the United States. Here in Woburn, our Indian American neighbors have strengthened our community in many ways, including our economy, knowledge, culture, and community engagement. We are pleased to be the host city to this first of its kind conference, raising awareness of the rich contributions of Hindu Americans. The heartbeat of our city is easily found in the strength of all our citizens. We take tremendous pride in who we are today in terms of evolving diversity, growth, quality of life, caring neighbors, civic commitment, and an open door. Again, a warm welcome to everyone attending Threads 2019 here in the city of Woburn. You are now part of our cherished tradition of annual cultural, community, and family festivals and celebrations. Sincerely, Scott Galvin, the Mayor of Woburn. I'd like to now invite Vikash Verma to come and read the letter from Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Puneet.
The Threads Conference, on behalf of the Global Hindu Council, had invited Honorable Governor Charles Baker to be among us. However, unfortunately, even though he showed enormous gratitude for this recognition due to pre-existing conflict, he expressed his inability to join us. However, he has been kind enough to send his greetings, and I'm honored to read it to you. Dear friends, on behalf of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito and I would like to welcome you to the 2019 Threads Cultural and Educational Conference hosted by the World Hindu Council of America. This year's conference focuses on the inclusion and collaboration of Hindu Americans in the Commonwealth and the United States, and will showcase the strength of unity in diversity. For many years, Hindu Americans have contributed greatly to society through diverse fields such as science, technology, medicine, education, arts, and much more. The conference is an excellent opportunity for Hindu Americans from various backgrounds to share their stories and journeys, and to discuss ways to further increase recognition of their contributions. Lieutenant Governor Polito and I would like to thank the World Hindu Council of America for hosting this conference and for their commitment to enhancing the inclusion and collaboration of Hindu Americans throughout communities in the Commonwealth. Please accept our best wishes for an enjoyable and successful conference. Sincerely, Charles D. Baker, Governor, Karen Polito, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you.
As you all are aware, Governor Dukakis was going to be here. Unfortunately, he had a personal situation and he could not make it to the event this evening due to a personal emergency. However, he did send a note that I'd like to invite Ms. Priya Saman, to come here and read personal note from Governor Dukakis. And as you're all aware, if you're from Massachusetts, you should know that he was the 65th governor of Massachusetts, and he was the longest serving governor in Massachusetts history. So we'd love to hear from Priya about what Governor has to say about the press conference.
Good evening. Mrs. Dukakis and Governor Dukakis, former governor of Massachusetts and the 1988 presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, were unable to join us tonight for the inaugural of the Threads Conference. However, he dearly wanted to share his message, which is as follows. I wish all of you well as you inaugurate something so important to the future of the Commonwealth and the country. As I'm sure all of you know, I'm the proud son of Greek immigrants and a living example of the American dream. Your community first got involved in the presidential campaign during my campaign in 1988 and was enormously supportive of me. I look forward to working with all of you with our combined immigrant contributions, given diversity is one of our greatest strengths. Needless to say, I hope you will invite us to another event in the future, and we will do everything we can to make sure that we are with you. All the best, Governor Dukakis. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. We're going to start the evening with a keynote from Mr. Rajiv Malhotraji. Many of you may know him, but I will introduce him nevertheless. He's the founder of the Infinity Foundation. He's an author, philanthropist, public speaker, and writer on current affairs and world religions. He studied physics at St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and computer science at Syracuse University, and was a senior executive, strategic consultant, and an entrepreneur in the IT and media industries until he took an early retirement, lucky him, in 1994 at age 44 to establish the Infinity Foundation in Princeton. Besides directing that foundation, he also chairs the Board of Governors of the Center of Indic Studies at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, and advises various organizations. I'd like to invite Mr. Rajiv Malhotraji to give us a keynote.
Namaste. It is indeed an honor to be here this evening. The Hindu Americans have come a long way. I've lived in this country for nearly 50 years. I was around 20 when I came. And for the last 30 years, spent 100% of my time pursuing this sort of journey. And it's quite heartening to know how many people are on this path thanks to the type of leadership who organized this event this weekend. I'm particularly missing Abhay Asthanaji and also Sant Guptaji in Washington, two very dear friends who are part of the organization that put this together simply because they're not here for personal reasons. And both of them have been stalwarts for a very long time. It's interesting when they announced my background, she said, retired early, how lucky. But let me tell you, since I so-called retired, I work harder doing this than I ever did in my professional career. So you're lucky, but it is lucky, I would say, because I have the opportunity to do what I really enjoy doing, which is this kind of work. The Hindu Americans, as has been mentioned already, are in every American sphere, every walk of life, as leaders, as people making contributions at the highest level. So I won't go through that because you will get 2 days of that discussion. I want to discuss in 2 categories these contributions and give you like a broad framework. In the first category are contributions by an individual Hindu where the nature of the contribution is not anything related to Hinduism per se. So somebody could be a banker, somebody could be in some field, sports person, whatever. And it is not a contribution on account of being a Hindu. It happens to be a Hindu who's a great banker or a great industrialist or whatever. So, but it's not because he's a Hindu. That's one kind of contribution. So his Hindu-ness is not necessarily primary factor in the contribution he's made. Then there are people in this same really kind of little bit different whose area of expertise in which they've made contribution is also not from Hinduism per se, but they attribute it to the Hindu upbringing. It's kind of part of who they are, their work ethic, their value system. They bring something of that sort. It may be conscious, it may be not so conscious, it may be that they publicly acknowledge it or not, but even though the field is not related to Hinduism, but they are bringing their Hindu-ness as part of their success. So these persons can sometimes be champions of Hindu Dharma more as sort of identity. It's more that that's in their identity. The second category, which is where I've been doing my research and writing and publishing all these years, has to do with where the contribution is Hinduism itself. Not that I happen to be a Hindu who've done this particular thing, but what I'm bringing to you could be yoga, could be Ayurveda, and a whole lot of things, which is a country where America is being enriched by the Hindu Dharma itself, and the individuals are the conveyors, the transmitters, the people who are the vehicle bringing this to you. But the knowledge system and the practices are from Hinduism. Now here, in this category, there are some subcategories. There are certain Hindu contributions which have become what I call digested into either Judeo-Christianity or science or secularism, and therefore they are disguised and not clearly understood as such. There is a Christian yoga, there is a science of yoga, there is a yoga for health, and there is a vegetarianism movement. There are many things that actually have been inspired by Hindus, environmental, ecofeminism, and actually this is a very large area of what are the Hindu contributions that are now becoming somewhat invisible, some of them, but they are Hindu contributions. Another subcategory is where the contribution has remained specifically Hindu. It is very explicitly a Hindu contribution, and it enjoys mutual respect with the rest of American life. So it's not necessary to digest it and to eliminate the Hindu source in order to become American. You can have 100% authentic Hindu practice, and nothing. The United States welcomes that. It's a great country in that respect. It's up to you to define who you are with confidence, and people will respect you for that. I always found that the more clear, assertive, explicit sense of who I am I present, the more people actually appreciate it. I found this to be the case. And it's a matter of our own inferiority complex that we are not sure of ourselves, or we don't have the knowledge, so we shy away from it. It's not that the United States asks you to dilute your sense of identity. So I'll give you an example in this case, in this kind of subcategory. If you take the concept of Ishta Devata, which means that I can worship the divine in a certain form, and you can worship in another form, and this person can worship in another form, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is actually the ultimate in pluralism. So this is a very Hindu idea. It's a very Hindu idea, and you don't find this commonly in the other major organized religions, because they have one particular deity, one particular method, and this idea that you can have many deities, and your own my chosen deity, is your form of worship. This is a very quintessential Hindu idea. It's not something being digested and hidden. It remains very Hindu, and yet this practice enjoys mutual respect with the rest of America. We respect others. We want them to respect us. You can have your Ishta Devta, I have mine, and this is okay. So this is an example where digestion is not necessary. Digestion is not happening, which is very good. But there's a third subcategory that I want to talk about a little bit, and I don't want you to get kind of alarmed at the word disruption, because nowadays you're in the tech field. Disruption is a good thing, actually. A few years ago, when I wrote that Hindu Dharma could be a disruption of American thought, one of those editors wrote back saying, no, it's very dangerous, don't use that word. But then this lady who was the editor went to meet her son somewhere in this area. She's from Princeton. And then she calls me and says, my son took me to this tech workshop and everybody's talking about disruption, so it's actually a good thing. So Hindu Dharma as a disruption of the American kind of crisis or American situation today. The left versus right in an irrevocable conflict. You cannot be together. The list of issues going on is huge. If you look at American history, there is the American grand narrative has a name. It's called American exceptionalism. It means we are the exceptional people in the world. This is our narrative. But American exceptionalism is not stationary and static. It keeps getting reinvented. Something happens and it falls apart. There's a period of crisis, like after the Vietnam War in the 60s. There was this whole breakdown. And, it is similar to what's happening now. There was loss of faith in the narrative and people doing all sorts of things. And then a lot of people, hippies, went to India. Some of them went smoking marijuana. Some of them went for meditation. Some learned yoga. Some learned bhakti. They all came back and actually enriched the American way of life. America got its act together. A whole lot of new things became part of the American exceptionalism. And so this alternating between a stable equilibrium of the American narrative and then something disrupts it, and there is a period of chaos, and then a lot of negotiation, a lot of jockeying for position, and then a new equilibrium is established, a new kind of version of the narrative emerges. This is happening in America all the time. So we are in one of those situations again, which means we have an opportunity to play a leadership role and actually make a contribution in this disrupted American narrative that exists. And I will mention a few of the ideas. We already have at the individual level a huge amount of yoga, mind sciences, Ayurveda, etc. But the extent to which this can go further has not been appreciated even by our own people. Even our own people are sometimes happy to do a reductionist version of Ayurveda, turn it into pills, turn it into a kind of map it onto Western scientific model to prove that it is legitimate. So the lack of confidence, leads us to say, okay, I'll prove it in your framework, so that you'll take it, you'll believe it. Actually doing that distorts it. I've been part of a think tank or let's say a kind of a committee at the Niti Aayog in India for these new systems of healing. And I was very surprised and disappointed that some of the top people from the country involved in the scientific validation and so forth are trying to use Western models to validate Ayurveda, to validate our traditional healing systems, because they think that that's what will get them recognition. And this is sort of lack of confidence. So the not necessarily clash, but there is an encounter between a reductionist model of the body and a new kind of what would be old for us, but a new in this country model of who we are, who is the person to be healed. It's a completely different model. And these two models, it would be a shame if the Indian model gets sort of digested, reduced, and turned into another, pharmaceutical product. This is happening, and it's a matter of concern. If we really believe in ourselves enough, then we should have the confidence to be able to present with full force the authentic version of these things. Second area is environment. The Western concept of nature as property, it's man's property, is very different from the Vedic idea that nature has her own personhood. Nature has her own rights. So its property doesn't have rights. So if I have some object, it's my property, it doesn't have any rights. I have the right. And so in the Western idea of environmentalism, conservation, you protect the fish from getting killed, because otherwise the fishing industry will be hurt. So it is because it's our property, we have to protect it, not because these fish have rights. You don't want to use too much oil, because if you run out, it's raw material for industry. So basically, the environment has to be protected because it is industrial property or personal property or community property, not that it has its own personhood. Whereas in our system, if you look at the Rig Veda, you will find the nature, bhumi, nadi, rivers, they are persons and they have rights. So the interaction between me and a person has karmic consequences in the same way the interaction between me and nature has karmic consequences. It is not that I should not do something because it belongs to someone as property and it may ruin the valuation of that property. It's not that way. It's a whole different paradigm. And we have to be able to confidently put these new paradigms as part of the American thought process, because America does welcome new ideas and we have to be able to put these ideas. Now, the industrialization of nature as property is a rampant thing. It affects animals. I was reading somewhere that there are 20 billion, with a B, animals killed every year for the meat industry. 20 billion animals killed a year. So, you have to inject philosophical, metaphysical new paradigms. It's not just, okay, we'll get cholesterol, so let's not eat meat. It's not just as simple as that. I mean, there's more deeper philosophical implications. Also, the whole concept of development and progress is being measured by GDP growth, which means more consumption. If you don't consume more, then GDP is not going to grow. So this means that satisfying your consumerism is the criteria for being better off. Whereas in our tradition, your bliss, your anand, is not a matter of how much you're consuming. I mean, you could be consuming a lot and be very miserable. You could even be suicidal. You could be depressed. On the other hand, you could be consuming very little and be exceedingly happy. So, equating success as consumerism is a kind of deeply rooted in the system. And we have to question that, because nowadays, if you look at if the whole world of 8 billion people want to be having the same per capita consumption as Americans, where will the raw material, the natural resources come from? We need many planets to do that. So there is rethinking. What I'm saying is being thought about by people in this country. But these are Hindu ideas we have to claim. We have to provide leadership. We have to provide references. We have to provide Shastra references. Because this kind of a thought is happening on its own in any case. So this idea of nimit matra, you minimize your footprint as a consumer. You minimize the ego needs as a consumer. It's a very important contribution to the United States. We should have the confidence to be able to stand up and debate in all these leading think tanks and cutting edge, people who are thinking out of the box about these issues. And we should be able to do that. Now, when we say the United States has its purusharth, its liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. Wonderful, but one has to question what is the definition of these terms. What exactly do you mean by freedom? What is the freedom? Now, in my book, Being Different, I described that the Vedic idea is freedom to and freedom from. Freedom to is I have the freedom to speak, I have the freedom to eat, I have the freedom to travel, I have the freedom to buy what I want, I have the freedom to work or not work. These are all freedom to what action I can do. I have a lot of freedom to. And that's the American championing freedom, that we have the freedom to do all kinds of things. Freedom from means that there are certain conditioning which constrain my mind. So I should have freedom from anger, freedom from jealousy, freedom from hatred, freedom from things that actually modulate, become the default mode of my thinking. And so if I get freedom from those, I'm actually more free. Right now, I'm not free because I have to go and satisfy this habit and that habit and that habit. I may think I'm free because I have freedom too, but that's a mistaken view of freedom. I have a lot of freedom too, but I don't have freedom from. So I'm not really free. This is a very Vedic idea of what is freedom. So you can start interesting conversations with Americans when they say, okay, this is liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. You could also say, okay, now what is the definition of happiness? Is happiness defined as kind of conflated with consumption? So somebody who got more is happier. How do you define happiness? So, if you look at our Shastras, these ideas are very deeply explained. Even in the American context, even in their own terms, we can add value. But it requires confidence to do this. When the United States, when America started, even before there was USA, the issue of who's American was an important matter of, discourse. It went through 3 or 4 phases. The first definition of us, the Americans, was we are Englishmen and the others are Indian. If you look at the literature in the 1600s, it is between Englishmen and Indians. That's the language used in all the discussions. But then, they were not just Englishmen, they were Dutch people and people from various European countries. And you couldn't say we are English. So then we became Christian. It became Christian and heathen. That became the dialogue, the us, them. And this is in the American literature. And then the Christians were not just Europeans. Some of the African slaves also were Christian. They were also Christian. So if you say the real we who is we are Christian, then you got to include them as equals. So then it became white and black. So it shifted. The we were Englishmen, then the we were Christians, and then the we were white. And the other were Indians, then they were heathens, then they were blacks. So this became a huge negotiation of who's insider. And there's a book called how the Jews became white by a Jewish anthropologist in LA, UCLA. I give a gift to a lot of my Jewish friends. There was a time when Jews were not classified as white people, and then they were. So there's another book, How the Irish Became White. Irish were not classified as white people. I know that in this area there's a lot of Irish people, but in the 1800s they were not classified as white people because white to be white meant that there's certain unions, trade unions, and they are white only, and you can join the union, get your job, and all that. And those who are not classified as white are not admitted. And so Ireland, being a colony of England, when those Irish came here, the English people did not want to include them as part of white unions, so they were not white. And so this redefining, renegotiating has happened and is still happening. And therefore, we as Hindus have an opportunity to be part of this conversation, to be part of this debate as Americans, and redefine the American exceptionalism narrative in such a way that we are equal, we are on par. And we are doing it with mutual respect, not knocking anybody else down, but wanting mutuality of respect back and forth. I will conclude by just mentioning that another huge disruption, which is not yet common to talk about, but I predict in the next few years it will become a very common thing, is this whole impact of artificial intelligence and what artificial intelligence will do to society, the impact on workers, labor being displaced, unemployment, haves and have-nots defined based on the criteria of who has the big data, who has the knowledge, who has the intelligence, who has the algorithms, and who doesn't. So the rate at which this AI disruption of society is happening is so dramatic, and there's a big lag between the technology and the awareness of the technology, the legal consequences, the social consequences, and so on. So I'm writing a book on this also, where I'm actually talking about the idea of Rashtra versus the idea of nation. And I'm looking at how, if we adopted the idea of Rashtra, first of all, there are some significant, interesting differences. If we adopted this idea of Rashtra, in what way might it contribute to managing the disruption that AI will produce? Because AI may have social consequences, maybe violence, maybe a whole lot of people who are not needed because machines can do that work. So I won't go into that because I was given a certain amount of time. To do all these things, we must train Hindu leaders to be exceedingly well versed with all of these kind of ideas, and at the same time so strongly rooted in our own Shastra and our own paramparas and our own tradition that we don't vacillate, we don't give up, we don't say, okay, let's just get it digested, let's Americanize it in such a way that we don't have to, we are not embarrassed about who we are. We should not be embarrassed about who we are. This is one of the reasons I'm so happy that we are doing this Threads conference, to show that we are on par with Americans in every walk of life, and therefore we have no reason not to be proud of the heritage which made us successful in the first place. Thank you very much.
And that brings me to another part of the evening that I deeply enjoyed, is introducing the conference host. The conference host, if you don't know already, is Sanjay Kaulji. He's the Vice President of the World Hindu Council of America. If you'd seen him running around right before the conference, that's his normal nature. He's always doing something. He's always really busy. Every time I talk to him, he's actually juggling 2 calls and actually talking to somebody else. I have no idea how he keeps it all together. But he does it, and I'm really happy to invite him to welcome the delegates. And let's a brief introduction. Mr. Kaul is a social and cultural activist based in Boston. He's passionate about preserving and promoting the culture and heritage of India among those who have their roots based on Bharat, with special focus on children born and raised in the US. By profession, Mr. Kaul is a certified civil engineer presently working for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. In India, Mr. Kaul hails from Kashmir and has served Kashmiri Overseas Associations as its president for 2 terms. He has made several presentations to Government of India representatives and international leaders representing the views and aspirations of Kashmiri Hindus. He's currently serving the World Hindu Council of America as a member of its governing council and as a vice president. I would like to welcome Mr. Sanjay Kaul to welcome the delegates.
Hello, namaskar. It's my honor and privilege on behalf of the World Hindu Council of America, THREADS organizing team, THREADS programming team, and the hosting to welcome all of you to Boston and the THREADS conference. I get asked following questions. What is THREADS? Why do we call it Hindu American Saga? Why this time of the year? And why in Boston? The first thing about the conference name, THREADS. As you all know, America has been built by immigrants. And every immigrant society from every part of the world, whether they are of any faith, any ethnic background, or any color, they have all come here and contributed to make this nation #1 in the world. And we are, as Hindus, as much part of it as anybody else. So that's the reason we call it THREADS. The logo that you have seen has 4 colors in it. And the 3 colors are from the American flag, red, white, and the blue. The 4th color we have added is the color of saffron, which is the color of Hindus. We are bringing more color to the society of America and making it stronger through unity in diversity. The reason we chose to call it Hindu American Saga, not the Indian Saga, because I just want to make one thing clear, that this is not a religious conference, but an educational conference. We wanted to talk about the Hindu American community that has come from every part of the world. This is about a culture. This is about a civilization. This is about people. This is not about religion. So anybody who has their roots in Bharat, of any faith, they are part of. That's how people would identify us, from the Indian Ocean to the Himalayas, that these people who belong to this land are Hindus. And they have come from every part of the world to this country to establish themselves, to realize the American dream. And that is what we want to talk about. Our struggles and tribulations in coming to this country and realizing the American dream. And in doing so, once we have been given the opportunity, we turn around to make this place a better society through our contributions. So we want to, like Jaiji said in the beginning, we want to share our story. We want to appreciate what this country has given us, the opportunity to realize the dream, and we want to engage the American society so that we can make life better for our children and generations to come through our vision, through our contributions. Why we chose this weekend and why Boston? The first thing, obviously I'm from Boston and being the host committee, but that's not the reason. The reason being, the first pilgrims, they landed in Wilmot, Boston, Massachusetts. The first colony out of the 13 colony was the Boston Wilmot colony. And this is the place where the history of this country took birth. Where else could we have started? Boston, obviously, Massachusetts. The three flags you see here is the Massachusetts, the Indian flag, and the American flag. Basically saying the history of this country started from the East Coast, Boston in particular, and that's where we have actually developed a beautiful society, a magnificent country, and we are part of it. Why this weekend? The invitation to this conference, the people who were invited was by invitation only. And our goal was to get about 400 people. And we were only going after people who are actually movers and shakers in the community, because we wanted them to come so that once they go back with all that they may have seen here or gathered from here through the panel discussions and other special sessions we have, that once they go back to their community and talk about it, there would be a multiplying factor. So we wanted those people to come here, and I am so glad to tell you that we have representation from 29 states in America, and we have representation from Canada. We chose this weekend in particular because it comes after Diwali, and among Indians and Hindus, Diwali is one of the biggest functions, biggest events. It's like the Christmas, and very hard to get people to come to any other event, right? Some of you actually local Bostonians will be going to some other event tomorrow as well, but it's a struggle. But we wanted to get people who will come with a determination, because they are proud Hindus, they are proud Americans, and no matter what, they will be part of this conference. And we did cross our goal of 400. We actually have more people coming than I can actually accommodate. So I am not sure how to say no to people, because everybody is very dear to me and I want them to come. So some people may be coming on for just certain parts of the conference, which is okay. The thing about this conference in particular is, like Jayji said and Rajivji talked about, we have been contributing to all fields of the society, all fields of life. People sometimes do not realize how much we contribute in every field. We have people who are serving in the American army, defending this country, because this is our country. We are fighting side by side with every American soldier to defend our borders. We are contributing through philanthropy to social causes as much as anybody else. And this is the story we want to tell. And why do we want to tell that story? Because we want to inspire our children. We want them to be proud of what the first generation of Indians and Hindus who have come here, what they have achieved, how they are contributing, so that these people actually take it further in days and years to come, in decades to come. We have beautiful, beautiful program, as you may have noticed through all the brochures we sent out, all the information we have sent out. The program tomorrow in the morning starts at 8 o'clock with morning ragas. It's a beautiful, beautiful musical session. It will be followed by a packed 6 sessions all during the day. After dinner, we have designed 2 special sessions for you. One is about the science of consciousness, and you will know a lot about it. And then the other one is the lightning talk sessions. We have actually more than 40 speakers in this conference, and there were so many more who wanted to be on the panels, but we could not accommodate. And these are so accomplished people, as you will know, and we could not actually ignore their presence. So we had to bring in this lightning session where they will come and for 5-6 minutes they will describe what their contribution is, how they have made success their goal and made through this their vision this country and created beautiful opportunities for others. So that is something delightful you will see. Then there were many other stories to be told which we could not have covered otherwise. So we have a poster session outside for your sake. We have like 38 posters, I guess, if I'm not wrong. This describes coming of Hindus in this country and other things that they have done over the years and how they have contributed. Please go through all those and appreciate the hard work that has been put in all of that. And then I have our local friend, our local artist, Sunanda Sahaiji. She has her own Madhubani art exhibit out there. Please go and check it. There is a story behind it and story behind each of her pieces that she has brought here. And the first one in the front of it shows the Zakum Bridge. That is a landmark of Boston. And if you are from outside of Boston, you will definitely appreciate the traffic when you came off Logan Airport to come here. You were on Zakum Bridge. So we wanted to include some landmark as well. So I thank you all for coming here. But couple of things. Please promptly come to all these sessions. We have beautiful panels designed for you. Please read through the theme for each of the panel. Our panel coordinators have worked very hard. The planning of this began almost a year ago. And these coordinators then chose, some of them are the moderators, then they chose the panel members, and they reached out and they will share with you what they have done and how they have contributed to make American society a better place. I want you to be part of each and every panel. Follow the time very strictly. The way we have designed each of the panel is that the speakers will talk in the beginning for like 30-35 minutes. Then we have 14 minutes of interactive session with the audience. You are asked to please write down your question, which our people will collect from you, bring it to the notice of the moderator, and the panelists will then respond to it. So it is everything is going to be an interactive session. We don't want to just tell you. We want to hear from you and then maybe devise something better. That is the goal. To make your stay here better, we have a host team which is working hard. They have this thing. If somebody is hiding in their pocket, just go find that person first. Go after that person. But everybody here is to make your life comfortable for next 2-3 days. We have worked very hard. We want you to appreciate what we have done and definitely ask us questions and make sure that we are able to deliver the best conference that we can. Only one thing, if we recently have seen with what has been happening in India and other things, there are many situations where there have been protests and other things. Though I said this is not a religious conference, this is just an educational conference about us being the segment of American society, and that's what we want to do. But there could be some chance, if there is any interruption, I don't want anybody to be alarmed or anybody to react. We should not react. If somebody wants to say something, let them say. We have few people who are very well versed with crisis management. They are the ones who will deal with it. Please do not react if anything up like that. But I'm not hoping that will happen because we have already started by including everybody and asking people of every faith to come here and interact with us. Learn what we have to say through our story, and if they have something to share, definitely through our interactive sessions, please, they will also interact with us. So we reached out to the Islamic Society of Boston, we reached out to the Jewish faith, we reached out to the Christian community, and our goal is to actually engage the American society. So we have done that, we have done our due diligence, and I'm hoping everything will go good. And with your blessings and with your participation, I look forward to a tremendous, excellent TEDx conference. Welcome to Boston and enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Sanjay ji, for the warm welcome. Yes, indeed, Boston is a place to be at this time. It is fall, and if you are not a native of Massachusetts, I'd encourage you after the conference to take a few hours and drive